Hello, and welcome to The Charge Cycle, an electrifying new podcast on all things fleet electrification. I'm Todd Trauman, I'm the CEO of Emission Control. If you are a procurement manager, a fleet operator, or one of the millions of people tasked with a zero-emission deployment goal, this podcast is for you. We speak with industry experts, funding experts, OEMs, and many others to help you stay ahead of this enormous electrification shift underway.
Hello and welcome back to the Charge Cycle. I'm Connor Whaley, the OEM and Partnerships Manager here at Emission Control, and today we are at EVS36. It's hosted this year in Sacramento. We're talking everything electric. It's a huge show. We're having great conversations with different people, and today we're actually with Austin Bowers of Future Fuels, and we're going to be talking a little bit about what type of progress are we seeing in the EV industry right now. So, Austin, maybe give a little bit of intro on you and what your company does.
Sure. Connor, thanks for having me on the show today. I really appreciate it. We're really excited to be here in Sacramento. What a great host city. Probably one of the major pubs for electric vehicles in the entire United States is here in California, so it's exciting to be here. To give you a little bit of background about me, I'm the Vice President of Operations at Future Fuels. So on a day-to-day basis, I really kind of deal with our charger sales, as well as a lot of our installations. We're kind of a full turnkey service in the Southeast, located in South Carolina. So we kind of help our clients start at the very beginning of a project, kind of let them know what their opportunities are when it comes to some of the government incentives that are out there, some of the tax incentives that are out there, and then kind of help them make a plan of what kind of EV charging stations they want to put in, what are they looking to accomplish, and then from there, they can buy the chargers directly through us. We are starting to manufacture our own chargers with a partner, Power Innovations International. So they are our manufacturer and have helped us design those chargers. And then after that, we install those for our clients and then service them later down the road when they need it. So it's a pretty neat opportunity that we get to do in the Southeast, especially in one of the growing parts of the country, because we're kind of a late adopter, if you will.
That's awesome. And it seems like you guys are really kind of the boots on the ground of actually deploying these chargers and actually seeing, all the different sites and the kind of the quirks and challenges on every specific site where you have to kind of tailor it on a case-by-case basis. And in terms of kind of actually deploying the chargers, what kind of progress have you seen over the last kind of 3 to 5 years from, actually getting chargers installed and having people actually start to use them on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah. So right now, especially in the Southeast, we're seeing more and more be put in. Again, like I told you earlier, we were kind of a late adopter in the Southeast. Florida's kind of a little bit of a different scenario, but at the same time in the Southeast, a little bit later, still trying to educate a lot of folks on what electric vehicles can provide to them and the really good incentives to be able to have one of those, whether it be, cut down on your gas cost and obviously cutting down on emissions across the country. So what we've seen in the past 3 to 5 years is certainly an uptick, specifically from a lot of people putting in their home chargers and then kind of moving into that charge at work space has become kind of popular in the Southeast. And we're finally starting to see this shift into actually getting some of those, larger DC fast chargers, some of the superchargers be put in the Southeast for us to actually use kind of along the interstates. I think Tesla and Elon Musk have done a great job kind of pinpointing some of those places, but then also you've got some commercial adopters now, especially in the fleet industry like you guys, that are starting to look at the DC side and kind of open them up to the rest of the market. So that's kind of where we're seeing boots on the ground, a lot of that shift going to. And, it's also being helped by a lot of the OEMs, the car manufacturers requiring some of their dealerships to put in these DC fast chargers for public use. Kind of gets everybody interested in this. Oh, well, I can charge faster. It doesn't take me so long. Okay, maybe it is easier for me to buy an EV now and travel with it without having to worry about where am I going to charge. So that charge anxiety is kind of hard to overcome, and we're finally starting to do that because of the expansion of especially of the DC network of chargers across the Southeast.
It does sound like we're almost at like a critical mass of chargers where now it's feasible for not just like the very early adopters, but really almost anyone that kind of comes across the curve of, people who are accustomed to EVs or even interested in them. Some people who weren't interested in it before now can be, because they're now a lot more comfortable with, not getting stuck at work and not having enough charge to get home. We're not in the kind of the era of the 50-mile Nissan Leaf anymore.
Right.
So you now have enough range on your vehicle side. You have enough charging capacity kind of around 99% of the places you go on a day-to-day basis. It's really, it's almost easy to buy an EV now. Before it wasn't like that, but now with, the infrastructure that you guys are putting in, it seems like it's almost easy now.
And Connor, we kind of agree with you on some points to that. It is a lot easier now to buy an EV. I think you're seeing a lot of the EV prices come down, for people to have a more affordable option, and the range is definitely there. So I think, kudos to the OEM market, especially those manufacturers that are, jumping in with both feet, right? To be able to provide that for a lot of folks that in the past, you looked at some of those high prices of EVs and went, wow, well, that's just something I can't afford, right? So I think from that aspect, it's a lot easier. And I do think, one of the challenges that we do see as far as traveling, right? So if you're staying in the same city with those longer ranges, it makes a lot of sense to be able to charge at work, charge at home. But the thing that we're seeing mostly, like I said, was that expansion to the DC fast charging side of the, network of chargers. And there still is some challenges there, right? So, I speak about my home state of South Carolina. We still have some pretty rural areas of our state that right now, without some kind of solution that we're trying to offer, there's no real opportunity for DC fast charging because you need, 480 volts of power. And then from there, if you don't have it, you're looking at, putting in all this infrastructure around buck boost and different panels and changing out things, even in commercial spaces, right? It's kind of funny, my dad is an electrical contractor. He uses the statement that, Edison may have created electricity on the East Coast, but it didn't get perfected till it got to the West Coast, and it never made its way back. And so, when you look at it from that perspective, right, we're still struggling to be able to put in DC fast chargers, which is kind of why we went to Power Innovations and said, look, we need this problem solved. And east of the Mississippi, we're struggling to put in DC fast chargers because we don't have, the infrastructure costs are astronomical. You've got mom and pop, car dealerships, mom and pop shops that they want to be involved in this movement, but they really don't have the opportunity because the funds just aren't there. So instead now, we're making the world's first DC fast charger that is multi-voltage and does not derate. So the kilowatt outputage that you order from us is exactly what you get. And so from that perspective, it allows somebody to, pay for a charger and not have to go through those same significant infrastructure upgrades. And I think that's where, kind of our product helps us kind of expand that network in the Southeast.
Well, and it not only expands the network in the Southeast, but it seems like a lot of companies are going to be looking for this solution, because looking at the solutions that are available right now, there's a lot of high voltage, 480 volt, solutions out there. Sure. But when everyone's going to be asking for those solutions, you're going to have huge problems on getting, the utility to be able to, provide the upgrades that you need. Transformers are, incredibly long delays right now. Seems like pretty much switchgear, almost everything that you need in order to get a traditional charger installed. That's the traditional solution, but you guys are able to provide the same type of performance on the charger, but you have a solution with the voltage.
Right, and that's it. That you nailed the problem on the head, right? So you've got people out there right now that are going ahead and buying their fleet vehicles, they're buying their personal vehicles, and then not knowing what they're going to do about the infrastructure if they're putting in a DC fast charger. Because as you just said, it's not just lead times from our industry putting those chargers back out into the world. What people are really actually waiting on is that infrastructure. And a lot of people will forget that, how does this charger run? It doesn't just, appear and then start charging my car, right? So you've got to have that infrastructure behind it. And like you said, with switchgear and transformers being so long delayed right now, you've got some folks that are waiting up to a year to put in a DC fast charger that they may have ordered today. I'm not putting in until next July. And so that frustration is really delaying a lot of that expansion. So you're exactly right. That's exactly what we're trying to do, is take what's existing and be able to use it to give people that faster charge. Because, as you probably know, we're Americans. We want things bigger, better, faster. And the only way to do that is through DC charging.
And, you bring up an interesting concept here where, the solutions aren't the same in every geographic region where, you say, the electric grid was kind of perfected by the West Coast, but it never really caught on the East Coast. So the infrastructure requirements are different on both coasts. You're very well qualified to kind of talk about the different types of solutions for companies that are on the West Coast. Some companies have operations on the East Coast. How do you see the solutions being different for facilities on each end of the country?
Yeah, sure. So on the West Coast, you guys have some really, really good options as far as, being able to put in a wide variety of solutions when it comes to EV charging. So because the grid is a little bit better out here, as far as for EV charging, a lot of energy management needs to go in out here. The populations are a little bit higher. You guys deal with a little bit of a different issue. Here in California, the rolling blackouts are pretty popular during the summertime. So out here, one of the solutions may be some bidirectional charging, right? So we do a little bit of bidirectional charging now. We're kind of waiting on the OEM and car market to catch back up with us, because there's only a couple of cars right now that can communicate in bidirectional terms. So from that aspect, once the cars catch up, I think that's a great solution out here on the West Coast, because not only am I, charging at non-peak times to not put more stress on the grid, but also turning it around and putting it back on the grid during those peak times to maybe help alleviate some of those energy shortages, right? So from that perspective, that's an awesome way for people out here on the West Coast to be able to be involved in the EV market, but also kind of give back to the grid so that we can kind of have that give and take relationship. On the East Coast, again, it comes more down to the infrastructure upgrades. We've either got to make the grid upgrades themselves to get more people access to 480 volt power, or we're going to have charging solutions like what we provide from everybody on the market. Because to be perfectly honest with you, Connor, if I could reach everybody in the market, I would love to. I'm a businessman at heart, but I know that's not always there. So to have some of the other manufacturers that are here at the show kind of see what we're doing and maybe take that as some advice to let's progress the industry down this path, then that's really the solution for everybody on the East Coast is let's make sure that we can provide it to everybody that's available.
So if you had kind of a crystal ball and you were going to kind of look 3 to 5 years going forward, because you know that lower voltage can provide a good solution for charging, you don't need 480 volt. You can do it with 208. You can do it with 220. You can do it with the voltage that are traditionally a lot more common in a lot of these facilities. What do you see the next kind of 3 to 5 year kind of rollout for chargers? Is it going to be DC fast charger infrastructure upgrades for the time being, or do you think that we can get a little bit more progress going forward?
Yeah, I think for probably the next 12 to 18 months, you're probably going to continue to just have to see the infrastructure upgrade, right? So that you're going to have to wait on the transformers. You're going to have to wait on everybody to kind of catch up. We're just now debuting this charging system that we've got, and it took us 18 months to develop. So to have the rest of the industry kind of catch up is what we're looking for or hoping for. But for now, I'd say probably your next 12 to 18 months, you're going to be looking at infrastructure upgrades. After that, I would probably venture to say that, you're going to have a lot more options. I mean, you've already got a bunch of guys out here that'll tell you, hey, we make a 240 charger. It's just not all in one solution. You're going to have to special order that 240 charger. Oh, and by the way, it does derate. So if you're ordering, a 30 kilowatt charger, okay, it's going to be down to 22 kilowatts. So I think you're going to see them start to perfect that, and that is going to change in the market, maybe after that 18 months going forward to those 3 to 5 years. And then the next thing I could kind of crystal ball out besides infrastructure upgrades is, I think everybody is currently operating on OCPP 1.6J, but moving to that 2.0 is going to be a huge thing for everybody to kind of get involved with more cybersecurity, the plug and charge modes, along those lines. I think that's the next big kind of push that you're going to see. And then besides the huge news of the week that everybody's talking about since we got here, which is the NACS cord being kind of the widely adopted cord from most of the OEMs. I think all of us are, kind of scrambling a little bit to find a way to get a hold of those cords and put them on our chargers. But I think you're going to see more standardization across the entire industry when it comes to, chargers, infrastructure, and the networking capabilities of everything. So for these last couple of years, we've been, kind of operating in the wild, wild west. Anything goes, and whatever you can figure out is, the next greatest thing. But I do think you'll see a little bit more standardization in the next 3 to 5 years.
Well, so thank you very much for, chatting with us. It looks like the future is really, really bright for, anyone looking to install any DC fast chargers. For anyone looking to get in touch with you or learn a little bit more about your chargers, how can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, so, check us out on social media. We're on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn as Future Fuels Energy. You can find us on our website at www.futurefuelsenergy.com. And those are the easiest ways to get a hold of myself or the rest of my team. But Connor, I really appreciate you having me on the show today. It's been a pleasure, and hope you guys have a great rest of EVS36.
Awesome. Thanks for joining the Charge Cycle, and hope you have a great rest of the show as well.
Thanks.
Hello, and welcome back to the Charge Cycle. Today we are joined by Chris Thorson of Flow. We're really excited to have you here at the booth at EVS36. Please tell us about yourself and Flow, what you guys are doing here.
Well, thanks, and I'm glad to be here today. Flow, we're an EV charging company. We started originally out of Canada, out of Quebec City. We operate the largest network of EV chargers in Canada, and we've been rapidly expanding into the United States. We've got a couple of key deployments, regionally up in the Northeast, also down in Los Angeles, and a few places in between. But we manufacture chargers. We operate a network, and we're really excited to be here at the show.
Yeah. And see, this has kind of been the theme for a lot of companies, is trying to figure out how their expansion works. Coming from Quebec City and kind of expanding into the U.S., there's probably been a lot of, hurdles to try and get the chargers and start deploying them here in the U.S. But, over the last few years, what kind of progress have you seen in not only deploying in Canada, but maybe kind of deploying into the U.S. as well, kind of all at the same time? What kind of progress have you seen?
Yeah, we've seen good progress, steady progress. I think a lot of people right now are really talking about NEVI and how do you go ahead and get those NEVI funds. But prior to NEVI even being the big thing, it was just getting street side chargers and public chargers and accessible chargers in the hands of everyone. And our focus as Flow is really on reliability. We see that as kind of table stakes you have to have. I mean, if you look at the reports that were done out of UC Berkeley just last year, they said about 70% of the time chargers work. Well, that means 30% of the time chargers don't work, right? That's really bad as an industry. That leaves a really bad taste in people's mouths. And so we're all about uptime, and we are proud to say that we get a 98% or better uptime, meaning our stuff just always works and it doesn't go down, and that's really our claim to fame, and it's that kind of reliability that we want to bring to the industry.
That's one of the biggest topics. So, whenever we have a conversation with someone, just looking to get either public or private charging, they're always asking, what's the reliability look like? And, on the gasoline side, if you went to a gas station and it wasn't working 3 out of the 10 times, people aren't going to be very happy with you. And that's the kind of the foray going into EVs, is trying to figure out, in the Bay, it's like, 30% downtime. That's not good enough, because you're going to be stranded if you really just got to a charger and you said, I barely made it. I only have a few miles of range left and it's down. You're stuck. And then the reliability, especially as you build out, a really big network, I'm sure a lot of people are looking at, reliability as being, one of the top two. Are you seeing a reliability going from Canada into the U.S.? Is it kind of the same conversation here, or are there kind of two different conversations that you're having?
It's absolutely the same kind of conversation. We think it's going to be very applicable. We've had to grow up in an environment that's a little bit more challenging. Our developers, in the winter time, it's 30 below, and the chargers still need to work. They can't get iced up. The cables still need to be flexible. A lot of people out there don't have a garage, so they're mounting like their home chargers outside. So ours is really the most rugged charger, our residential charger, for outdoor deployments. And we carry that into our B2B products as well. So we had a little bit more challenges, but then when we come to the U.S., we know they're going to work. And so it's not only about the reliability, but also that just rugged design. It's not just the hardware, though. The magic really is in the software, because we're constantly checking in on those chargers. Every 15 minutes or so, they phone home. And so we know if something is down. Okay, great. I know a lot of other vendors will say they do that. The difference is we're actually going to do something about it. We're going to roll the truck. We're going to troubleshoot it online. We've got all the sensors in the chargers themselves, but we can actually fix those problems remotely. And if we can't, we'll roll a truck and make sure that it is up and running. And so, we charge a nominal fee for our site hosts to do that. But the benefit is your charger's always going to work, and your customers are never going to be disappointed, whether it's your employees in a private setting, or whether the people that pay good tax dollars to have these things put in the ground, they're going to know that if they went with Flow, the stuff's going to work.
Yeah. And when looking at that kind of reliability, a lot of people don't think about, once it's in the ground, what's going to happen after that, because that's where really, that's what's going to make or break the industry, or at least one of the big aspects is, can people count on these chargers across the board? If you're going to be using a level 2 at a workplace charging, or if you're going to have a DC fast charger, public charging infrastructure, it all has to work, and all has to work seamlessly. It seems like the software that you guys have working on your level 2s, your DC fast chargers, and it's working rock solid all the time.
Yeah. And that's really one of those benefits of being a vertically integrated company. And what I mean by that is we make our own hardware, we operate our own network, we service all of our network as well. And so from the app that you carry in your hand to payment and processing, all the way through the charger itself and everything in between, we know where things might break down. We've had experience with those things breaking down, and we've been able to fix those problems. And that's really the value that we bring. And so we think our model works pretty well. The numbers kind of prove that it does work pretty well. And we're proud to bring that into the North American marketplace.
Talking about the solutions that you're kind of most excited about going forward in the industry, we've seen a huge amount of change. You've probably seen the same with not only your technology and your software, but the solutions that people are really starting to get excited about, especially here at this show. A lot of new developments are starting to hit the market and really start, scaling up. What kind of solutions is Flow, and specifically, in your opinion, what solutions are you most excited about that are currently being deployed?
Right. I think we're moving from this phase. If you kind of want to think of back into school, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, we just talked about the reliability and uptime being kind of those base level needs and requirements. Well, now we're starting to move up that chain, and people are starting to care about things more than just does it work. People are starting to care about the user experience. They're starting to think about accessibility and making sure that anybody can walk up to a charger, use it right away, and have a great experience. So what does that actually look like? Well, just this last February, we announced our new Flow Ultra. And for those of you who haven't seen it, go check it out. But we've done some nice usability improvements on there. So these big, heavy cables, it's great that we can do fast charging with these liquid-cooled cables, but they're really heavy. So if you'll notice, our charger's got a nice cable management system, a long cable that even for a fast-charging cable, doesn't matter which way you park in the stall, I'm still going to be able to plug it in easily, and I'm going to have a weight-assisted cable to plug it in. And then we also look at just the user experience itself. We're adding things like, plug and charge. We're doing, additions so that you can use Apple CarPlay and directly from your car, and to be able to find a Flow station and get logged in. So we're trying to make the entire experience a better thing, rather than just making better hardware. We make great hardware, but now we want to, like I said, move up that hierarchy of needs so that your entire experience from, a mile away when you're finding the charger to 10 feet away when you drive into the parking lot and you can actually see the lights of where the charger is, to the 1 foot experience when you've actually got to push buttons and make the charger work. We're trying to think about that entire workflow and make it really seamless. And so I think that's really where the industry is starting to evolve and go from just good enough to having great experiences.
That's a really interesting way of thinking about it. I actually didn't think about it like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where you just need the foundation. You need food, water, shelter. You need reliability. You need chargers out there, and you need to be able to use them.
Exactly.
And then the user experience just kind of goes up from there. Where on that kind of hierarchy of needs do you think that we're at right now in the industry?
We're totally at the base level. I mean, think about it. It is people will today, unfortunately, put up with lousy charging experiences because they don't have a choice. But imagine the day when you're driving down the street and you don't even think about chargers, and you're just, you don't even think about where is one. There will be one on the street, just like there will be a gas station around the corner.
Yeah.
And then it's really a matter of preference. I know those Flow chargers are always a great user experience, and I know some of the other guys might not be. I'll choose the Flow charger. At least that's what we're banking on by delivering that better experience. Because at some point, there'll be a higher and higher density. But right now, you're like, is there any charger within 10 miles of where I need to be? I'm just going to go there, even though it's 10 miles out of my way, even though it's not in the greatest part of town, even though there's no food or amenity options as I sit and wait to do my charging or my shopping or whatever it might be. I think down the road, people are going to luckily have more choice of networks, and they'll have more choice of products that they use, and hopefully the standards will come together so that people have choice, and we can deliver better experiences.
I think a lot of people don't give credit to the industry, as much, because a lot of people are saying, these chargers and everything, they're not as, prevalent as they should be. But just kind of rewind the clock, 5, 6, 7 years, and looking at it from where it was, especially, even just in your own network, and just how many chargers you've started to deploy, and change that kind of perspective of people saying, I don't want to drive across town to go and charge. I can just go down the street to this Flow charger, and, it works.
Yeah.
That's a huge kind of difference. And, we've seen a huge amount of change over the last 5 years. Where do you think, what are the biggest challenges and kind of where do you think the market's going to be in, say, the next 1 year, 2 year, 5 years?
Yeah.
Where you think it's going to go?
There's going to be a lot, there's the importance of the network effect can't be understated, right? Like the more chargers that are in the ground, the more confidence people will have in buying EVs and making this transition, because no doubt about it, this is a big transition. This is one of the biggest transitions in one of the biggest industries that the world has ever known. I mean, it kind of sounds like hyperbole when it's coming out of my mouth here, but at the same time, it's not understated. The auto industry is a giant industry, and that industry has gone all in on EVs. So, and if you look at the news articles, so many times right now, people are pointing to the EV charging industry as like, well, that's the problem that we've got to go fix. That's where we're going to get stuck. I would love to not be in that position. We're going to get out of that position by having more chargers in the ground, making sure that those chargers work, and making sure that us as manufacturers interoperate. So, think about back in the cell phone days. I came from the telecom world, right? Imagine if you had a cell phone and you could only use it in your local region, right? So that's why vendors in that space started doing roaming agreements. Well, we've done the same in this industry. So we have roaming agreements with our competitors in the marketplace. Why? Because we know it's the best thing for users, and us and those competitors have kind of agreed. Look, we're not going to have unnecessary charges between us. We're somebody comes to a Flow charger, somebody uses the Flow app, they're going to get paid through that app. And we're just going to pass those costs on through because it's what's right for the customer. So I hope that there's going to be more interoperability going forward. We saw those recent announcements here with the NECS connectors. So now we're going to have more options for customers, and hopefully that means you're not going to have to worry, is it a Tesla network I'm driving up to, or a non-Tesla network, or a Flow network, or ChargePoint, or whoever it may be. Fine. You're going to be able to have an adapter, or over time, maybe we'll consolidate those on the car side so everybody's using the same adapter. That would be ideal, but that's going to take a long time to do. And in the meantime, we've got a lot of work of just getting chargers in the ground and getting the electricity out there where people need it.
I've explained it to a lot of people before. Never in really the kind of measurable history has an industry so large as the automotive industry moved so quickly to kind of a new technology. And there's going to be roadblocks there, and there's going to be challenges. And looking at trying to deploy chargers is just kind of the biggest one, making sure the utility infrastructure is there, making sure that the chargers are there. And it's only going to continue getting better. And just because what we're seeing, and with your network as well, we're going to be seeing that hopefully, kind of increase in speed as well, just because people are understanding the problem a little bit better. People are understanding the solutions that work for all of the different geographic regions, different companies, different compliance, and the products that are being developed and the teams that are actually deploying these chargers, hopefully only going to get better. There's going to be more of them, and then we're going to hit that critical mass eventually.
Yeah, and it's really being driven by, think about it, the drivers themselves. Why? Because the cars are better, right? Electric cars, they're faster, they're quicker, they're cheaper to charge up. I can charge them through my solar panels in my house or whatever. So the demand is there, and now you've got these industries that are traditionally kind of slow-moving industries having to work together. You've got utilities working together with OEMs, and then new players like ourselves, and we're all coming together to try to get these things in the ground fast. And even the government's pushing some dollars out there. So it's really a big race, and there's a lot of coordination. And I would just wish things could be moving faster than they do. I'm sure everybody does, because even if you've decided this is the best site that I want to put in a charger, it just takes time to get those things in the ground. So I hope the consumers out there can be a bit patient with the industry. I'd love to see things going faster, but I think you'll see more cooperation. I think you'll see more collaboration to get the end goal, more chargers in the ground and have a better experience for everybody.
Yeah. And I'm sure Flow is going to be kind of on the forefront leading that
Absolutely.
charge. Absolutely.
Yeah.
We're going to be seeing a lot of more Flow chargers around.
I sure hope so.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for the conversation. Have a great rest of the show, and we're looking forward to seeing Flow chargers out in the wild. People want to learn a little bit more about Flow chargers and kind of what you products and the kind of products that you offer. Where can they get in touch with you?
Well, absolutely. Come visit us at www.flow.com, FLO.com. We'd love to talk to you. Give us a call, and hopefully we'll be seeing you guys more soon.
Yeah. Thanks so much, and have a great rest of the show.
Take care.
Awesome. Hello and welcome back to the Charge Cycle. Today we are here with Katrina Sutton of CALSTART. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having me.
So, just to kind of start, what do you do at CALSTART? And can you tell us a little bit about kind of the projects that you do, a little bit about CALSTART? What is CALSTART in your guys' projects?
Yeah, so I work for CALSTART. I've been there for about 2.5, almost 3 years now. I am a technical project manager, but I primarily work in the demonstration team on the bus side of things. So I do a lot of work in the zero-emission transportation sector kind of as a whole, but my focus is on transit side of things. So CALSTART, the kind of the phrase that they like to say is that we're a member-based nonprofit in the zero-emission transportation space. So very broad, and that means we just kind of touch every aspect of zero-emission transportation.
And you guys are always the fun ones to go and talk to because you guys manage HVIP as well, right?
Yes, we manage HVIP, which is one of our biggest projects, and it's just so fun to see all the zero-emission vehicles that are out in the world because of our help. We also manage Energize, which is sort of similar, which works on the infrastructure side of things, so the heavy-duty hydrogen deployment as well as charging stations. We also have on the light duty side, we have one called Communities in Charge, which is focused on level 2 charging infrastructure programs in the state. And nationally, we have a new one called Charge at Work, which is focused on workplace charging, which is very exciting. That's
one of the biggest topics right now. Like everyone's talking about like workplace charging, home charging. They kind of go similarly. A lot of people are charging at home. They come and they charge at work. Specifically, like on the workplace charging, isn't that what you are kind of looking at right now? That's kind of like the big topic for you at CALSTART.
So my background, about me is I've been in the zero emission kind of electric vehicle space for about 8 years now. I started in 2015, and I actually did my master's thesis research on workplace charging. So that's why I'm here at EVS, kind of talking about that research. And then additionally, kind of as a tangential to that, also talking more about our workplace charging program with the DOE, and so kind of getting more of the hype out there and sort of the knowledge going out there because it is a national program, whereas CALSTART is known a lot in the state, but working nationally is also really exciting and really good to get the word out.
And it seems like a lot of people, they're starting to start in one state and they're kind of expanding outwards just because everyone needs workplace charging now. It's the same kind of problem in a lot of these different areas. How much progress have you seen in workplace charging over the last 3 to 5 years? Is it still relatively new? Has there been a lot of progress? What progress has been made?
So a lot of things about workplace charging to keep in mind is that about 15 to 20% of all charging is at work. And that's the most populous location to charge outside of the home. And so focusing on workplace charging is really important because it allows a lot of charging, I guess, not frequency, but more dependability. So it's in the same place. You have your kind of routine, you're charging every day when you go to work stereotypically, and then you can come home and either charge there as well or just focus on workplace charging. It's also really important because folks that can't charge at home, this is a really dependable way to consistently be able to charge in the work day, in the work week. So I've seen more interest moving forward, especially in California. But also the fact that the DOE was really interested in funding a project like this really shows nationally that's something they want to focus on.
Yeah. Workplace charging is, it's 20% of all of the charging, but it's a really important 20% because a lot of people are starting to, when they're starting to get into electrification, they have to figure out, okay, well, I can charge at home and that's great, but, I can also charge at work. And it's trying to shift their kind of mindset, shift their kind of way of thinking on, okay, well, I can't actually fill up because a lot of people are coming from gas and diesel vehicles. They can fill up at work instead of having to, charge at home all the time. Are you seeing any kind of shift in people's perceptions of workplace charging? Is that a big thing where you have to really kind of walk people through, how workplace charging is going to be, implemented? Are people excited about workplace charging? What are people's perceptions of it so far?
Yeah, so workplace charging has been really important to, I was saying, help with apartment complex folks. For example, my brother, he works in the Bay Area and he can't charge at home. He's in an apartment and he only can charge at work. So if he didn't have this workplace charging, he wouldn't be able to have an electric vehicle. I would be mad at him for that because my whole family loves electric cars, but it's really that was one of the key questions he had about when he was employed is do you offer charging at work? That was one of the pluses. That was a requirement for his job when he was job hunting. I lost the last track of your other part of your question.
Like people's perception on charging.
So from the people perspective, it's really like a visibility thing. So when I have an electric car and I'm looking around, like I look for charging stations. Like it's so much fun. I play the game in all the parking lots. And in the workplace, the parking lots are smaller. It's more of a controlled area. And so you're able to kind of manage it a little bit better. And that's kind of what my research was about, is thinking about how to manage charging to increase charging station utilization and vehicle throughput, which basically means letting as many cars as you can possible charge. So then you can maximize the usage of the charging station, and so more people can charge and you get more electric vehicle miles on the road, which is fantastic. And you see that a lot. A lot of car owners we see are hesitant to get an electric vehicle if they can't charge at home. And so workplace charging is, like I said, like a very solid way to make sure that you can charge reliably and consistently and in sort of a more like private area, because public charging is so variable. There's so many different inputs. Somebody could park in the spot. There could have damaged infrastructure, or, it's just too congested. And so workplace is a good place to control the situation.
What kind of solutions are you starting to see become, popular, or they're starting to kind of roll out and scale for the first time, or like something that you're really excited about on the workplace charging? Are there any solutions that are being implemented to kind of past problems that you're really excited about, where, this wasn't something that was, a big thing before, but now is really starting to become more commonplace? Are you seeing anything like that for workplace charging?
So for workplace charging specifically, the technology is fairly standard. It's stereotypically just level 2 charging. I wouldn't recommend DC fast charging in a workplace setting. But we're seeing a lot, like with Charge at Work, for example, we're trying to set up like site analysis help for folks. So if you're in, a parking lot and you don't know how much it's going to cost or how much power you have at your facility, it can really help kind of do a layout and try to understand how much infrastructure you can put in and how much it would cost if you wanted to do more and like add in more breakers or more electrical like stuff. So that would help kind of that as well. I also think that's exciting to think about, because if you're in an office and you're doing workplace charging, that also opens the door for fleet charging. So if somebody has, a bunch of Ford Transit vans they drive every day for work as a business thing, then if you're already putting in kind of workplace charging for your employees, you can also think about putting in chargers for fleet applications, as well as, kind of any other warehouse applications that you could think of.
That's actually, I didn't think about that before, where if you have, business operations that you're looking to electrify, especially right now with, the Advanced Clean Fleet and any other, sustainability goals that companies have, using workplace charging as, part of the electrification strategy for their fleet side, all at the same time. So you can get your chargers installed kind of on the back lots, then you get workplace charging installed for your employees. Does that make it easier for, just on a project management basis, getting workplace charging and fleet charging done kind of at the same time?
I would say yes. I haven't looked at like the numbers specifically, but because it's very expensive to run trenching in your parking lot, to kind of, if you have to upgrade your utility panel or get more power from, the transformer or any other like electrical stuff from the utility side, it makes it really useful to do it all at the same time as like a form of cost savings. And since, we're in California, like everyone wants to go electric and the state is really pushing hard for that, it makes sense to just do it all in one go, especially if you own your lot. If you rent, then it makes it a lot harder. But if you already own the land and you have no plans to move in the next like 5 or 10 years, it's a really good investment.
Even if they have, long-term leases like 5-10 years, even if they're leasing their building, it's still something that they can do.
They should look into that. With the leasing side of things, it makes it a bit more complicated. I guess I would regularly say that they should talk to the leasing company and kind of see if you can do some sort of shared cost setup, because it also is an asset for the building owner. So if anybody ever leaves the building or what have you, the fact that the infrastructure is already installed is a really good plus, especially in the Bay Area or other high concentrations of electric vehicles.
Yeah. And kind of going forward from here, we seems like there's a lot of solutions now for people who want to install workplace charging. People are looking to get fleets and workplace charging, almost simultaneously. But kind of going forward from here, maybe like 1, 2, 5 years from now, where do you see kind of workplace charging kind of going from here in terms of people actually being able to deploy chargers? What does that look like over the next kind of 12 to 24 months?
Well, I hope they keep installing workplace charging.
Hopefully.
I want more of it out there. I think it is a really good kind of key component to just kind of the charging infrastructure as a whole and sort of electric vehicle adoption. Hopefully, so the Charge at Work program is sort of, we're ramping up.
Yeah.
So we're starting a big launch in October. So hopefully in October, at least CALSTART for perspective, we can do a lot more into the workplace charging aspect. And I think that the electric vehicle adoption just keeps going, and so making sure that there are vehicles on the road, and that the employees and employers can communicate and kind of talk about what would be useful for their facilities and such like that really makes a difference in trying to get more spur adoption both on the infrastructure side and on the vehicle side. Yeah.
And that's hopefully, going to be a trend that people are going to, continue down, where it's only going to get easier, it's only going to get cheaper, and a lot of people are starting to do it all at the same time, which means, people are going to need a lot of help. And a good place to go is actually looking at what you guys do at CALSTART. So again, Katrina, thank you so much for, talking to us. If people wanted to learn a little bit more, not only just about workplace charging, but about CALSTART and all the other programs that you guys offer, where can they kind of learn that and get in touch with you?
Yeah, so our CALSTART.org website, full of facts. Our Charge at Work website is just chargeatwork.org. We have our implementation manual coming up in October, and we're working on a lot of stuff like that. So we have tons of stuff. Anyway, CALSTART.org, Charge at Work, tons of website and tons of resources out there.
Awesome. Well, Katrina, thank you so much. Have a great rest of the show.
Yeah, thank you.
Hello, and welcome back to the Charge Cycle. Today we are here with Mike Potter from CrowdCharge. Welcome to the Charge Cycle.
Hey, Connor. Really glad to be here.
Yeah. So, maybe we're here at EVS36. Maybe just kind of give a little bit about background on you in CrowdCharge and what you guys are doing.
So, CrowdCharge is the energy management platform for EVs and kind of everything else as well. But I got into the EV space 2018, so quite a long time ago. My real background is cars and auto, so but I got into the energy space and I'm now completely geeked out on it. So we love talking about that
We all
stuff.
do that once we get in.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and so most of the time, like when people get into the industry, it's a very fast-paced industry. Even just from 5 years ago in 2018, a lot has changed since then. What kind of progress have you seen since you started getting into the space to now? What's kind of the biggest wave of progress that you've seen over the last few years?
It's normal now to get an EV, right? That's probably, I know it sounds boring as a thing, but that's probably one of the key things that I noticed way back when we were speaking about it. It's like you'd spend a lot of time explaining that, oh yeah, no, it's an electric car, and just going through it. So the fact that people accept it, generally, like for the UK, it's so for the leasing industry, 50% of new registrations are BEV, because there's some tax incentives around using the cars through a business. So, and overall it's 16%. So it just gives you some idea of how important the business sector is for the uptake of the vehicles,
Yeah.
So yeah, it's monumental. It's moved so much.
It really has. We were saying just how fast that change has come upon us over the last probably 2 to 3 years. Has really seen just a monumental shift, not only in just how people perceive EVs, but people actually buying them. 16%. That's still a huge amount of the new car market starting to kind of convert over to battery electric. And, we're seeing the same thing in the US, where everyone's starting to switch over, and kind of looking at the challenges and the solutions that people are really starting to, tackle now are completely different than the ones that we were kind of 2-3 years ago. What are kind of the solutions that are being kind of deployed now that you're kind of most excited by?
We're past the point with a lot of, in the UK, transitioning to EV as being a subject matter with a lot of people. We kind of call it EV 2.0. It's like, you're quite right. We're getting the new problems now. So people have got workplace charging, and they need to now put the next slice of workplace charging in. There's no grid capacity. We get you've got the early drivers that are really happy to drive their commercial vehicles, and now you're trying to get some of the ones that perhaps aren't quite as happy to do that to go through. And then we've had a bit of a backlash in the UK around EVs just recently.
Really?
And this is quite normal, apparently, with new technology. You just get to this point where you get into the early mass adoption, and you just start to get a bit of it becomes a bit of a target for a little while, and then we'll get through it in the end. So, they're the kind of challenges that are there, I think.
So when, looking at people who are now starting to get into EVs, or at least understanding them, it's now a new concept to them that they didn't have to deal with before. Because, before, if you were a business, you were in the business of selling your product or service, not in the business of converting to EVs. And now companies that weren't really interested in that space or really, excited about it are now having to seriously consider it. And all of these additional, pain points are coming up that weren't there before.
Yeah.
There's an interesting concept as we're starting to get towards more mass adoption that new people are having new problems and they're going to require new solutions.
Yes, we're definitely finding that. For the first thing, the people driving the vehicles are less informed because the early adopters they're those sort of people. They go and find all this information out, and often they tell us things that we didn't know. But the new people, you have to be right. Okay, you've definitely got something to charge this car at home, and you need to step through all the things they need to do and just make sure they're not going to get a bad experience, right? Because it is easy to just assume, as a lot of people do, oh yeah, and I'm just going to go and fill it up at a public charger, right? And that doesn't really work a lot of the time. So home charging, of course, is definitely the best way to go at it. And then I think you get things like we get into grid capacity being an issue for things. I think there's so many more models of cars to understand, and some are better than others. So just getting that right, when we started, they were all terrible. Really, like Leaf,
The old Nissan Leaf where you didn't know if you're going to
get
get home or not.
Yeah, exactly. Now, you've got a choice to make. So, yeah, there are new problems. And there's a lot of people on the other side, on the supply side, starting to be interested who sometimes aren't as informed or geeked out by it as we are. My leasing business in the UK is only BEV, and we have been for 8 years now. So everyone in the business knows a lot. They're all geeked out about. You get a lot of car sales outlets where they just happen to do some BEV and perhaps want to quote like the full EPA range for the car. Will do that, and that doesn't always happen. We get that problem coming back to us. So yeah, it's all good though.
It is always good.
It's much better than not doing enough, right? So it's.
I keep saying, it's a good problem to have, and these new problems. And actually, one of the things that we're starting to see is, especially on the fleet side, when you're trying to convert all the way to battery electric, trying to understand data management and telematics is something that's significantly more common in the kind of EV space, much more so than even in the diesel and gasoline fleet.
Right.
Where telematics are becoming more important in managing data, and it really comes down to kind of managing data for a lot of these companies.
Yeah, I think very often it starts with the bit of work before they get the vehicles, because everyone wants to understand how far they go, and before they probably weren't as worried about it. So that does happen. I think also EVs, for standard road cars, have all that stuff on them already. And we just log into the cars now. We don't even have to put a device in, and we get all the data from them. We turn them on and off and all that sort of thing. So that's cool. But what we found over time is what really matters with fleet transition for like commercial vehicles or where they're operational vehicles is what's in the driver's head, right? Because you can tell them all the data and say, you only do maximum of 50 miles a day. And you ask the driver and say, how far do you need this thing to go? 200 miles. I definitely need to go. It's like you never go 200 miles, but they've got this worry, and so you have to deal with what the people are thinking. That's much more important than the data sometimes, is try and do that and check the drivers and make sure they understand what they're doing and get that right. Really important.
It really is. Looking at range and anxiety is something that it used to be a massive concern. where, if you could only get 50, 70, 100 miles of range in a vehicle, you're not going to be able to do most of the routes for your business. But now that you have businesses that can reliably hit 200 miles, 250 miles, sometimes they're even talking now 275 and 300 on the kind of heavier class side. Those are, really usable ranges that you don't have to worry about kind of range anxiety nearly as much. But that kind of concern that companies are having on whether or not the battery electric vehicles are kind of up for the job, now that we're starting to get towards, higher adoption rates in those fleets, either they're leasing them, or do you see anyone being concerned about having fleets that are going to be 50% electric, 100% electric? It used to be that they were 90% was what they knew. Do you see that there's kind of apprehension on, higher penetration rates of 70, 80, 90% battery electric from some of the fleets that you work with?
Yeah, sure, because it's physics, right? So there are, as you get to the outer edges and you're getting up past 80%, you're wandering into vehicles that it is just really tough to do. If you've got a huge amount of power takeoff, for instance, you've got to deal with that on a more conservative amount of energy. So, yeah, there are always going to be things like, and some people do have trucks that are just going all day, right? They're just cycling around. So I think the answer is we will have to modify how we do things in some way. And most people that drive EVs have to do that a little bit, don't they? If you make a long journey, you've got to do a little bit of planning, just a little bit of planning. You can't just go, I'll get some gas at the next stop,
Oh, yeah.
It's and I think everyone will just learn to do that. And actually it makes the whole process of driving or whatever more efficient and more relaxing anyway. I don't know if when you drive an EV, most people report, I'm much more chilled than I was driving an ICE vehicle, so
the biggest thing is, especially those kind of new adopters, not the early adopters, but kind of the 50% of the people under the curve, first time that they get into an EV, they always wonder, where's the engine noise? Because there is no engine noise. It's more quiet. It lends itself better to, say, automated driving and a lot of other things. So the EV as a platform, in almost every respect, a sufficiently developed EV can beat its internal combustion counterpart in almost every meaningful metric. And that's kind of what I'm most excited about, the next few years, is that people who didn't normally consider EV as an option are now seriously considering them. Like my mom, all she cares about is she has radio and air conditioning and a powered seat. That's all she needs in a car. But she's actually getting a Tesla for the first time, and it was because she really liked that EV.
Yes.
And I'm curious to see kind of your perspective on what the next few years are going to look like. We've seen huge growth here. What is the kind of next year, 24 months, 36 months, in terms of kind of BEV leasing or people getting comfortable with it? What do you think in kind of the short to medium term that people are really going to be, excited by?
So we're going to see more and more uptake, right? We're on a bit of maths now of an S curve that will just keep going. I think that's just the way that is. So one of the things that changes from fleet and for everybody is you can run your vehicles longer because the maintenance requirement is just way lower, especially as you get up to higher mileages. So we are now putting vehicles on lease for 8 years if people want it. We wouldn't do that before. And we're going to like 300,000 miles. It's like,
wow.
Just, it doesn't, it's actually quite a good thing to sell because most people's perception for that is going to be expensive on maintenance. And it just doesn't work. It doesn't work like that anymore. That's gone. So the models for leasing companies have got to change because historically you would get some money. You might find the vehicles and get a bit of a discount for people. But you needed to add a layer of service, which was maintenance, to keep people engaged with you. That's what they're buying. And that's gone. So we think that is energy and charging is the thing that someone does constantly. So you need to have an answer for that really engages the customer and believes that you're giving a better service than the next person. So we're concentrating on that area now. I think that's, for me, one of the exciting things.
Yeah. Well, and I think there's going to be a lot of, exciting things, especially, in that area. And, as we start to see kind of what happens in the industry, more problems are going to come up and more solutions are going to come up. And it's just going to be the cycle until we get almost everyone into an EV, not even because they don't want to. And we just kind of, by compliance, they're, complied to get into one. But everyone's going to want
Yes.
to get
yeah.
into an EV.
Yeah, it gets easier as we go forward. I think the other thing that I think is really exciting is the way that people change their understanding of energy. So when people get an EV, by about the time they've had one 3 months, they understand what a kilowatt hour really means. And before it was just a thing on their bill, which they just resented, right? They just resented paying their utility. Once they understand a kilowatt hour, they start to think about energy differently. For me, that's really exciting because EVs have the capacity to kind of revolutionize the way in which energy is managed in the grid to enable us to have more renewables. So we can turn them on and off and play about with when they're charging. And if you've got V to G going both ways, you could do even more. That's going to really help renewable uptake. I know in California you have this thing called the duck curve. I met the lady last time I was here that wrote that paper, and that's getting now to like negative territory quite a lot of the time, right? And the EVs could be the answer. We don't have to build anything new, right? We don't have to like use any resources to do it. We just need to organize it. So it's a kind of free facility that we can access to fix some of those problems. For me, that's really exciting. To solve that problem.
It's exciting for me. I think it's exciting for you. That's what we're here for at EVS36 as well. But Mike, thank you so much for coming by. A lot of people are probably interested in what you do. What's a good place for people to get in touch and learn your services and products?
So we're here to start working on a business called CrowdCharge that's about the energy management for both businesses. So if you're putting in a bunch of chargers, we can help you scrunch down the power requirements so the utility doesn't have to put in a new grid connection, for instance. And then we'll also optimize for energy price and carbon. And for Drive Electric, we've just built a tool that will show the actual carbon that is in your tank that you're using. So we take the grid mix every time it charges, and then we can tell you how many grams per mile you're using, like in real time, which is really important for people's ESG reporting and things like that. So yeah, that's the kind of thing we're doing. So go and have a look at crowdcharge.com online and call us, and we'll see if we can help you out.
Awesome. Well,
Okay.
thank you again. Have a great rest of the show.
Thank you very much.